on our next witness, Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Nasmith.
Yes, I just want to clarify. I'm here speaking on behalf of the Toronto branch of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, which is the branch local to the City of Toronto.
Thank you. And
without getting into the structure.
Okay. So as you've heard, you will have up to 15 minutes for your presentation.
That's right. Thank you. I'm here as the president of the Toronto branch of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, and as someone who has been active as a citizen and an architect in Toronto for planning for 30 years. I am a registered member of the Ontario Association of Architects. In fact, I was given the Order of Da Vinci for my work in the profession. I am well known for my expertise in traditional urban fabric. The ACO celebrates its 80th anniversary last year. I was involved in founding the Doors Open program in Toronto, Ontario, and Canada. With many others, I worked to strengthen the Ontario Heritage Act in 2005. I'm a past chair of the Toronto Preservation Board, a past president of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. I am currently the Ontario representative on the Heritage Canada National Trust Board, and was a founding member of the Main Streets Advocacy Group and the Friends of Fort York. I make my living, such as it is, as the principal of a micro-architectural practice specializing in small-scale building projects and heritage planning. I've completed several heritage conservation district plans in the City of Toronto. My contributions to the field have been recognized with both the Queen's Jubilee and Diamond Jubilee medals. I'm also a recipient of the Jane Jacobs Prize for my contributions in the field of heritage. In my spare time, I publish Build Heritage News, an e-newsletter with about 2,000 subscribers across Ontario and Canada. Sorry for the long bio. All that was to establish that I have hard-won expertise in how the OMB interferes with planning in Toronto and in other parts of Ontario. Today I will focus on Toronto. Heritage conservation is not just about the historic fabric, the built form, but about the way of life that fabric supports. In spite of a strong Ontario Heritage Act, the Ontario planning system militates against heritage conservation in several ways. OMB decisions contribute to problems, but are not the only factor in the loss of heritage property, and with it, the loss of historic patterns of life. The OMB plays a significant role in the blockbusting of neighborhoods and the destruction of our traditional urban fabric, and the previous witnesses spent a great deal of time outlining how that happens, so I won't repeat that. Older Toronto is eminently livable and walkable, built at a density that supports streetcars. OMB improved replacement buildings at completely inappropriate densities are overwhelming Toronto's transit and sidewalks and creating awful wind and shade conditions. Precedents have been set for the new normal of 40, 60, 80 stories, even by OMB decisions that specifically claim that they are in no way setting a precedent, such as the one permitting 36-story towers next to Fort York. I was very heavily involved in that OMB case. Small entrepreneurs and businesses are being forced off main streets, replaced by endless condos and larger corporate retail. Where will small businesses start? Already, Toronto is seeing mass migration of our artists and creative entrepreneurs. The OMB distorts Toronto's planning processes. A large proportion of the city's planning and legal resources go into OMB hearings, leaving the city with insufficient ability to actually plan its future, including the future of its heritage buildings. That creates a vicious circle of escalating densities wherein the city is continually trying to make sense of OMB decisions that completely alter plans on which it and its residents had spent years. No wonder the City of Toronto is begging the province to get off the merry-go-round. OMB members may have limited expertise in planning, let alone expertise in Toronto or heritage matters, and rarely take advantage of the ability to have representation from the Conservation Review Board when an application involves heritage. I'll just touch on some other factors that contribute to heritage losses. Other factors under provincial control contribute to heritage losses, some of which are also factors in destructive OMB decisions. The Places to Grow Act. According to the Places to Grow Act, heritage shall be conserved where feasible. This is very different language from the language of the PPS, which states straightforwardly that heritage shall be conserved, period. This change has led to heritage being given second place in redevelopment decisions, which end up at the OMB. Conflicting policies in the PPS. the heritage shall be conserved clause in the PPS is routinely trumped by the PPS intensification policies, which at a minimum are creating out-of-scale development in historic areas and at worst obliterating huge tracts of Toronto. OMB decisions lead to inflation of property taxes. MPAC makes its tax assessments based on recent planning decisions in an area, including those made at the OMB, not on the basis of existing zoning or buildings. Evaluations based on highest and best use are making it impossible for long-standing businesses, particularly ones renting premises, to survive. Often that highest and best use is speculative based on OMB decisions in an area. You will have read this last week, the story of a mom-and-pop corner store at the corner of Roxborough and Yonge that was forced out of business by tax hikes that are based on potential for OMB-approved redevelopment. My friend Margie Zeidler, the owner of 401 Richmond, Toronto's haven for artists and incubator businesses, spoke recently against the Mervish-Gary proposal, fearing that a new normal of 80 stories would make it impossible for her to keep rents affordable. Her concern was about the impact of the constantly escalating development on tax bases. Another point I want to raise here is cabinet failure to declare a provincial interest. This came up in the case of 21 Avenue Road and the impact on the views of Queen's Park, which I had a large hand in arguing for. Cabinet failure to declare a provincial interest in the 21 Avenue Road case contributed in a major way to the OMB-approved development that will have negative impacts on the views of Queen's Park from the ceremonial route along University Avenue. The failure to declare a provincial interest in the case left the Speaker to defend those views with no greater powers than any other citizen of Ontario. The ACO is still asking this government to pass a bill protecting that clearly provincially significant view shared in cultural heritage landscape. I realize that's not the subject of this hearing, but I never miss a chance. The City of Toronto has subsequently put limited views protection into its official plan. But here's the rub. But no matter what policy the City of Toronto might put in place, that they are open to challenge at the Ontario Municipal Board. Sooner or later, the developer with the right lawyer and facing a pro-development OMB member will dismiss that protection. So, two reasons the committee should support Bill 20. Bill 20 is not a fix for all the issues that originate in provincial policy facing Toronto heritage, but freeing Toronto from the OMB would be a step in the right direction. It would let the City of Toronto develop a complete local planning system tailored to its unique needs as Canada's largest city. To be respected locally, it would have to include expertise in planning, architecture, and heritage law, and be organized to level the playing field between development and community interests. And the most important reason, it's the overwhelming wish of the City of Toronto to manage its own affairs as expressed through the Council vote of 34-7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have about 6 minutes for questions. Mr. McDonnell.
Okay. One issue we have with the bill is that it doesn't propose a solution other than the courts if we abolish it. How would you think that it removes the right for many groups to actually oppose developments, because it just it can make it too expensive to actually bring it to court?
I would put to you that the City of Toronto is a grown-up place. And if that became the case, the City of Toronto has the power to set up a body that works for the City of Toronto, which would address that issue, and which could also address some of the other things that just are not working in the current model.
I also hear some of the problems with the system today is their zoning bylaws are out of place, and I think that one thing that I would think is from former mayor, those type of things are critical. If we want to be determining our own future, we have to make sure our documents are up to date. Instead of letting, as you say, an unelected board make decisions based on, I guess, our inability to put a guiding document in place.
Well, that plans being out of date, it has many sides to it. For example, the case at the Ontario Municipal Board around the Fort York Heritage area, the plan was 5 years old. I mean, that was not out of date, but it was overturned. In the case of the zoning along a main street, which maybe 10 years ago, the city went through a really, really long, involved exercise looking at the downtown main streets, which are largely full of 2.5 to 3 times coverage, mixed commercial residential. Everybody agreed that was pretty good, and then we wanted to keep that. So the zoning was set to not to create incentives to destroy things that are already working. But the argument that's being made now is that if you haven't reviewed it or changed it in the last 5 years, i.e. upzoned everything, the city's failing. And I don't think that argument makes a lot of sense. I think it's particularly for the City of Toronto, the 5-year window for reviewing plans is just not realistic. I mean, the whole idea of planning is to plan for the future for a long time out, and that's a lot further than 5 years. So, I'm not sure how out of date zoning can be.
I guess I might suggest that your official plans are not 5 years out. They're actually much farther out than that. But you have a chance to update them every 5 years. And we've heard stories of
Takes 5
zoning
years to do
amendments
that.
being more than 50 years old, which I would think a lot has changed in 50. I certainly think that studies should be done here, and I question the OMB, overruling documents. And I think it's our shouldn't be lecturing, I guess, but I think that it's we have to make sure documents are up to date so that they can make a fair decision.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think it's if the city were to every 5 years go through and say, yeah, that's okay, we like that, we don't need to change that, that would probably satisfy it. But I mean, one of the things that I've observed is that the so much of the you call a planner on anything, and they're the OMB. So much of the resources and time of staff is spent at the OMB that there isn't actually time to do the kind of on the ground planning. This week, for example, I attended a planning meeting on the future of College Street, and the city is trying to put into place appropriate zoning for College Street. And I think when we go through that exercise, we would conclude that, and we're doing that in the face of a current OMB application. College Street is like this, it's the edge of the university, it has great dignity to it, we're sitting on it.